Well, let's unpack this further with Tahani Mustafa, a Palestine analyst at the International Crisis Group, and she's joining us from Jordan's capital, Amman. Tahani, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. What do you make of the timing of this expansion by Israel of its offensive in Gaza? After, as we heard there from Ashraf, so many weeks of the blockade, why are they doing this now?
Well, I mean, look, right now we're seeing, the continuation since Israel unilaterally broke the ceasefire almost 2 weeks now. But what we have started to see is Israel ordering the evacuations of parts of Gaza near its border. That has already affected over 35,000 people, many of whom had returned to these areas during the ceasefire. We've seen Israel create these evacuation zones that many of us anticipated since the restart of open warfare were likely to be expanded in the coming months and weeks to concentrate the Palestinian population into so-called safe zones, while also at the same time depopulating much of the Strip. And it's as your correspondent rightly mentioned, there is no such thing as safe zones in Gaza. We've seen in retrospect over the last 17 months that Israel has never left an ounce of the Strip untouched, and we've seen that even in the last week or so. So this really does seem very much on trend in the way that Israel is pursuing its military campaign, which now it is making no secret of the fact that it is going full on maximalist with its objectives, which is not just to destroy Hamas, but more importantly, to ensure that Gaza is completely unlivable, completely uninhabitable, and to ensure that there is no permanency on the land for Palestinians themselves. And more importantly, right now, Israel is being encouraged, greenlit by a U.S. ally that isn't even offering a modicum of even the bare basics of rhetorical condemnation at this point. There are no goalposts here. Israel knows full well that it has the full backing of a U.S. administration that has already floated ideas of depopulating the Gaza Strip, that has already laid out the contours of a plan to ensure that Gaza is turned into some kind of holiday resort. This is also coinciding against the backdrop of in the last week or so, we've seen the most radical elements of the Israeli political system return to Netanyahu's coalition. So this really comes as no surprise, given the immense amount of pressure politics Israel has been applying, especially since the start of Ramadan.
When you talk about that pressure politics, there is a segment of the Israeli population that is applying pressure on their own government to return to a ceasefire. This, of course, is mainly to bring home the hostages. It was just earlier today that the hostage families released a statement saying that the bigger offensive in Gaza now could just kill those hostages still being held in Gaza. But internal pressure doesn't seem to be affecting the plans of Benjamin Netanyahu, which so much, as we've heard from so many analysts, is based on also safeguarding his own political career.
That's right. It is a very self-interested, self-preservist calculation on the part of Netanyahu, and that's been the case, since the onset of the 7th of October, 2023. Nothing has significantly changed in that way, in the way of Netanyahu ensuring the longevity of his own political career as well as his own coalition. While at the same time, you do definitely have domestic pressure in Israel, it's not substantial enough to really sort of change facts on the ground. I think the Israeli population themselves are fully well aware, as you rightly pointed out, that it's not going to be Israel's military campaign that ensures the release of those hostages. It has always been through negotiations and these sorts of humanitarian pauses and ceasefires that we've seen take effect. But we also know that this isn't really about the hostages. Netanyahu, in the first few months of the war, had 9 different opportunities where Hamas were offering the hostages for far less than what they have been asking for since May 2024. At one point, Hamas were willing to hand over all the hostages in exchange for preventing a ground invasion, and this was within the first 3 months of the war. So it's very clear that the Israeli political establishment has no interest in its hostages. If anything, they've become more of a pretext for Israel to pursue something they have been pursuing since 2007, which effectively is to ensure that Gaza remains uninhabitable for the population that is there. And even if we do see, the removal of Hamas, there are absolutely no guarantees that we're going to see the end of this campaign. Even if you do see Hamas hand over all hostages, and we had seen that during the humanitarian pause. It was working. It was working effectively. Israel was getting its hostages back. While at the same time, you had Israeli politicians undermining the basis of the deal, rescinding many things that had been offered, violating the ceasefire something like 1,000 times over, and effectively showing that they had no interest in guaranteeing either the return of their hostages or an end to this fighting.
Tahani Mustafa, Palestine analyst, really appreciate you speaking to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.